On this episode of Supercars Talk, I'm flying solo in the shed as we wrap up the Melbourne 400. Now we'll start off at the beginning of the weekend. Not sure how many of you caught the telecast on Thursday. There was a couple of qualifying sessions and we had to sit through the commentary of Scaife and Crompton, continually saying how all the F1 guys say this track's so bumpy and this is the smoothest in the V8s. Thank God that didn't get repeated all weekend. And the other phrase that kept popping up was how much the F1 guys love watching the V8s. And once again, thank God that didn't get continued all weekend. These lines come out every year, and yet when you see the cars go down the pits, you might see the odd F1 guy sat there looking, but it's just, they don't care what's going on. They're too busy worrying about fiddling with their cars. So this weekend on Thursday and Friday we had 4 qualifying sessions, which all of these were done before the racing. It's quite unusual, this format. Normally on a Saturday we'd have qualifying and then a race, and then Sunday we have qualifying and then a race. But the Grand Prix, obviously there's some time constraints, so 4 sessions of qualifying. Now I don't mind this, other than the fact that you have by Sunday you've forgotten who qualified where on Friday morning for that race. But my bigger issue with this is you get 10-minute sessions, which basically only gives you one run, or you can go flat out and do 2 laps. But with the high tyre degradation around here, it makes it quite difficult. I think it's hard to think of a way, but there's got to be a better way of doing this. I mean, even if we increase the sessions to maybe 12 minutes each, something like that, just to give them half a chance of having a second run. Really impacted Chaz's qualifying for the first race. He buggered up his first and then everything was rushed, and he ended up qualifying 22nd. Of course, didn't really affect his result too much. He charged through the field to 5th, but it just doesn't seem quite right that this is for championship points, and yet the qualifying for each race seems so rushed. So race 3 of the championship, the first race at Melbourne. Other than Chaz charging through the field, not too much happened. What was quite impressive with Chaz's charge was that he was actually passing cars. He didn't go an alternate strategy, like he didn't pit early or pit late or anything like that. Basically, all the cars he passed on track, which this track's usually quite difficult on passing, so he did really well with that. One of the incidents during the race, well, it was actually a non-incident, was Whincup got released in the pits and Scott Pye was right next to him. And instead of just keep going, whoever's on the radio, probably Couchy, jumped on the radio and said, "Stop, stop, stop." And he stopped, let Pye through, merged him behind, and off we went. Bit of a different outcome to what happened in Adelaide, where we had the pits blocked, and probably a bit of a lesson to some of the other teams as to how things are done. On the flip side though, Triple 8's other car, Shane Van Gisbergen, had a rare engine failure. I think, going by what happened over the rest of the weekend, maybe someone's walked under a ladder, or they got a black cat or something like that, because he's had a shocker. Race 4 of the championship, which was race 2 over the weekend, the 1000th V8 Supercar race. Okay, not sure how much that means, considering we also saw Erebus and Team 18 celebrate their 200th round, or 200th race over the weekend. These statistics, when you have so many races a year now, just kind of seem meaningless. When you think back the first few years of the championship, there was only 1 race for the whole championship, and now we have 30 odd each year. So it's very hard to compare these statistics to years gone by. And other than that, I mean, race 4, Scott went and won another one. Race 5 didn't get off to the best, well, it actually didn't even start for Scott and Cam Waters. I'm not sure if you've seen the footage, but there's a bit of weaving on the, not even the warm-up lap, the actual lap where they're going from the pits to the grid. And Scott was weaving, warming up his tyres and that, and Cam came charging through, ripped the back rear wheel off Scott's car and did a fair bit of damage to the front of Cam's car. Both of them didn't actually start the race, which was quite a weird sight, the front row empty with the two BJR cars effectively the front row then. Too bad they couldn't hang on to it. And Chaz got a win there. A few other things during the race. Jamie Whincup crashes into the wall and keeps going, and yet his teammate Shane Van Gisbergen wheel just randomly falls off. I'm not sure whether that's luck or should we put on some tinfoil hats, and there's definitely something going on there. After Shane's wheel fell off, there was a safety car period, and I was surprised that there was only 3 cars. Rick Kelly, Simone Di Silvestro and Richie Stanaway pulled in the pits to put new tyres on. Would have thought a few more would have maybe taken a chance, bit of a risk, to go in, put new tyres on at the end of the race and try and come blazing through the field. In the end, it was probably a mistake to do that strategy. The 3 of them didn't really get any further. It would have been interesting to see if someone a bit further forward, say like maybe a Fabian or someone like that who had a bit of pace, if they'd given that a go to get a result. And probably the big talking point from this race was Lee Holdsworth and Richie Stanaway. I'm in two minds about this. Richie did hit him pretty hard and was riding him, but at the end of the day, Lee didn't get turned around or anything. Richie ended up getting a 10k fine, $5,000 fine, $5,000 suspended. And he was disqualified from the results and also had to start race 6 from the pit lane. So it's a fairly severe penalty for, in the end, what was probably, a bit of a smashed up rear bumper and rear tail lights and that. He didn't spin him around or anything. I don't side with Richie much, but I think this was probably a bit harsh, and maybe if Lee hadn't reacted so badly about it, maybe we wouldn't have looked at this so hard. Race 6, and everyone got to make the start of this one. We had a bit of an incident, Shane Van Gisbergen and Fabian Coulthard. Shane kind of skipped turn 12 and overtook Fabian, and then it looked like he was trying to redress, but then he ended up locking up and ploughed into the side of Coulthard going into turn 13. It was very strange and very clumsy looking. Then they interviewed Mark Dutton, the team manager at Triple Eight, about it. He said something about Shane having braking problems. I'm not too sure if that's kind of, making excuses to cover for him or something, but if he was having that much braking troubles, why was he pushing so hard? Later on in the race, then we saw Simone Di Silvestro, Macaulay Jones and Gary Jacobson in the battle for what was probably last place, which actually ended up trashing Macaulay's car again. The damage not as bad as what happened in Adelaide, but not a great start to the year for the rookie. Of course, Scott went on to win race 6, 3 from 3 starts on the weekend, or 3 from 4 races, depending on how you want to look at it. Chaz ended up winning the overall, which gives him the Larry Perkins Trophy, and it was great to see Larry there over the weekend. He'd been a bit sick the previous weekend and didn't get to the historics at Phillip Island. This means Scott's still leading the championship. He's got a nice even 500 points. Second, Jamie Whincup. Considering he hasn't had any outstanding results for the year, he's just consistency, obviously, brought him to second. Chaz on his fight back, he's now 63 points behind. And a big surprise, Will Davison is 4th in the championship, and he's 87 points behind. Looking kind of in the hunt there a little bit. Considering everything that happened over the weekend, it's hard to go past Scott McLaughlin for the biggest winner of the weekend. but I'm going to because I think Chaz did a brilliant job. He won the overall round. Granted, he only won one race, but considering the year those guys had last year, he's looking a lot better this year. On the converse, the biggest loser of the weekend, Shane van Gisbergen. He was second coming into the weekend, and I think now he's about 11th in the championship, which that's ridiculous for a Triple Eight car. They should be right up the front there. He hasn't had a good run though. And another talking point for the weekend is Mark Winterbottom. Now, his results in the newly revamped Team 18 are a lot better than what he was getting last year. And his results are a lot better than what Lee Holdsworth is doing at the moment in his old seat. But the way Chaz drove past him over the weekend, you'd have to kind of look and feel a little bit sad that maybe you're not scooting around in one of those Tickford Mustangs. So that's it for the Melbourne 400 wrap-up. Next up, we've got Symmons Plains in 3 weeks' time, which is back-to-back with Phillip Island. We'll have a preview show coming up before those rounds. I might have a co-host with them, I might not. We'll see how everything goes. Until next time.
Put away your inhibitions. Let the beast in you just get loose. We all young, wild, and